Hello, dear hearts. Welcome to Connecting to Consciousness, where the focus is to explore, to question, and examine our perspectives. I'm Nasira Waters. So, today I'm going to focus on making our values visible, and I'm going to focus on that actually for 6 weeks using the word values as an acronym. And today's first letter in values is V, so that's what we're going to focus on, providing an introduction and a concept through providing a word for V. That word will support the process of making our values visible. So let's get into it. So, what values are you currently expressing through your patterns of thinking, behavior, and choices? Why is this important? Well, it's important for a number of reasons, two of which are we often believe that we have specific values, and in my observation, frequently our patterns of thinking, behavior, and choices do not align with the values that we believe exist. Another reason is that we can struggle with being intentional about making our values and aligning our thinking, behaviors, and choices with those specific values. Now, as we go through this process of exploring and considering making our values visible, it's important to understand that it is a process. Just like any area of growth that is required, it is a process in terms of making our values visible. And when I considered this, it brought me to the idea of a plant's growth. Now, I love plants, and of course, they're great for cleansing the air. And I watched one of my plants, and I noticed that there was a little sprout there, and I thought, oh, maybe a leaf is coming through. So I looked a little closer, and I didn't see a leaf. And so I forgot about it. Then a few days later, maybe close to a week, I started to see a little leaf kind of peeking through. And I thought, oh, okay, there is a leaf coming through. And it made me think about, well, what's happening in the soil that is, the soil is rich, because actually there are many new leaves that came up through that particular soil. And so when I considered that whole process, I also thought about what is required. What is this whole process? Of course, we know water, um, good soil, and the sun. But then I thought about what are some other considerations that are required, that we must think about when we want our plants to grow. So there are external and internal factors. So the external factor could be the elements, right, for the plant, bugs. And then the internal factor is the plant's DNA. There are a lot of external and internal factors, but for the purpose of this video, I will just stick with the external being elements and the internal being the plant's DNA. And like the plant, we too have external and internal factors that impact our ability to make our values visible. And I thought about an external factor being the presence of others. Others' personalities can influence how we show up and the ways that we make our values visible. And when I considered internal factors, I thought about our individual propensities, our tendencies to actually engage in thinking, behaviors, and choices that don't support aligning ourselves to our values. So, just as the plant requires specific nutrients and considerations, so too does our spirit, soul, mind, and body, each of them having the potential to impact our capacity to make our values visible. Now, to support aligning our patterns to our values, the first thing we need to be clear about is, what are our values? What are your values? If you already know what your values are, write them down. Do any of them have any of them changed? If you don't, take the time to consider what's important to you. Come up with 3 to 5 values that are important to you. Once you have those values, I invite you, as a process of getting clear about your values, write them on a piece of paper. Fold the paper into sections having the same number of sections as the number of values that you have. And once you do that, write each value, one value in each section. And as you move forward, let's say each day for a couple of weeks, be intentional about monitoring what values are you expressing through your thinking, behaviors, and choices. And at the end of the day, write the behaviors in the sections that align with the value. So if you value integrity, you'll write that behavior down that aligns, or those behaviors that align with having integrity. And at the end of, let's say, 2 weeks, you can look at that and see which behaviors align with your values. And those values, those behaviors or patterns of thinking and choices that don't align with any of the values that you have, write those on a separate piece of paper, because you really want to see and monitor what your specific patterns of thinking, behaviors, and choices are, so that we can be intentional about making our values visible. Now, as you go through this process, be mindful to try to avoid thinking about, and I'm going back for a second, as you think about and write down your values at the time, try to avoid thinking about your behaviors in the past. And it's okay if you do, but try to avoid that in order to come up with your values, because it's important to search your heart and think about what's important to you as you come up with the values, those things that are important to you. So I wanted to go back to that. Now, once you have that, again, you're going to write them down and consider that. Which of your patterns of thinking and behaviors and choices fall into each specific value. Now, as you're thinking, as you're looking and observing and evaluating this whole process, another step that we can take in making our values visible is starting with the V, vision. What is your vision for your life? How do you want to show up in your life? And how do you want to impact the world in a meaningful and positive way? Now, to consider what your vision is for your life, remember to look at your values. Consider how your values are connected with how you want to show up in the world, in your life, and impact the world in a positive and meaningful way. And the way that I invite you to do that is using the 5 W's. Who, what, when, where, why. Who is impacted in your vision? What is being addressed in your vision, and what are your expected outcomes? Also, When are these things going to take place? When it comes to your vision, when is it going to take place? Is it going to start soon, in the next couple of months? When? What is your time frame? Then where will it take place? Will it take place in a nonprofit organization, in a school, in a church? Where is it going to take place? And why? Why is this important to you? Why is this vision important for you to pursue? Is it important because it's something that you see there's a need and you have a passion for it? And or is it important because it was something that you were impacted by in your past? Whatever the reason, it's important that we are able to understand the elements of our vision so that they are also aligned with our values. Now, as you go on this process of making your vision, your values visible, know again that it is a process, growth is a process, and that it's a process that requires that we are intentional and conscious about being about our patterns of thinking, our patterns of behavior, and our choices aligning to the values that we say we have. So, as we continue on this journey of curious self discovery and making our values visible, I invite you. Let's take this journey together. Until next time, live consciously.